The contract that shook the NBA, LeBron James just sent a message to the entire NBA without even stepping on the court. At 41 years old, after more than 2 decades under the brightest lights in basketball, LeBron is no longer just another superstar waiting for a team to hand him a contract. He is a free agent with power, money, leverage, and a business empire so massive that the Lakers, the league, and even the loudest voices in sports media are all forced to wait for his next move. And that is exactly why Stephen A. Smith is back on his neck. Because this is not just about whether LeBron returns to Los Angeles. This is not just about another NBA deal, another farewell season, or another chapter in purple and gold. This is about something much bigger. This is about a man who may not need the NBA nearly as much as the NBA still needs him. LeBron already said it himself. He understands he is a free agent. He understands he can control his own destiny. But when those words come from LeBron James, they hit differently. Most players say that because they want option. LeBron says it because he has built options that almost no athlete in history has ever had. Nike, Spring Hill, Fenway Sports Group, Beats, Blaze Pizza, PepsiCo, GMC, Walmart, DraftKings. The list does not even sound like a player's endorsement portfolio anymore. It sounds like a corporate empire with a basketball jersey attached to it. That is what makes this situation so dangerous for the Lakers. LeBron does not have to rush. He does not have to panic. He does not have to take a deal just because it is on the table. His money outside the NBA is still moving, whether he signs tomorrow, next month, or walks away from the game completely. And Stephen A. sees it. He sees the brilliance. He sees the wealth. But he also sees the control. In his eyes, LeBron's empire is not just about business, it is about narrative. It is about legacy. It is about building a wall so high around his name that criticism can barely get through. So now the real question is not just where LeBron plays next. The real question is this: is LeBron James controlling his final chapter, or is he forcing the entire NBA to live inside it? Before we go deeper, tell me where you are watching from. If you think LeBron is a genius for building this empire, press 1 inch the comments. If you think Stephen A. is right to call out the power behind the brand, press 2. And if you want more NBA stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because this story is just getting started. The $1 billion wall around LeBron. To understand this LeBron James situation, you have to stop looking at him like a normal NBA free agent. Normal free agents need teams. They need guaranteed money. They feel pressure when cap space disappears and franchises start moving on. But LeBron is different. He is standing behind a $1 billion wall he has spent more than 20 years building. It started with Nike. Before LeBron played one NBA game, Nike saw more than a 8-year-old prospect from Akron. They saw a future empire. That first massive shoe deal proved LeBron was entering the league not just as a rookie, but as a brand. Years later, his lifetime Nike deal confirmed it. LeBron was no longer chasing short-term checks. He was building wealth that could outlive his playing career. But shoes were only the beginning. LeBron wanted ownership. He wanted equity. He wanted to be inside the rooms where real power moves. That is why Beats mattered. That is why Blaze Pizza mattered. That is why Fenway Sports Group mattered. He was not just taking endorsement money. He was collecting pieces of businesses that could grow while he kept playing. Then came Spring Hill Company and Uninterrupted. That changed everything. LeBron was no longer just making money outside basketball. He was building his own media machine, his own microphone, his own way to tell the world who he was before ESPN, First Take, or any critic could define him. And that is where Stephen A. Smith sees the problem. To him, LeBron's empire is not only about success, it is about control. Control of the money, control of the message, control of the legacy. When one athlete has the brand, the platform, the fan base, and the influence, Stephen A. believes criticism becomes harder to deliver and even harder to survive. That is why this free agency feels so different. The Lakers may need an answer. The NBA may want clarity. Fans may want to know how the final chapter ends. But LeBron does not have to rush. His companies still move. His deals still pay. His name still sells. That is the real power of the $1 billion wall. It protects him from pressure. It gives him freedom. But it also creates the question Stephen A. will not stop asking. Is LeBron protecting his legacy or building a wall so high that accountability cannot reach him? Stephen A. Smith sees the real problem. Stephen A. Smith is not angry because LeBron James became rich. That would be too simple. Stephen A. has said it himself many times. LeBron deserves respect. He is one of the greatest players ever. He is a billionaire. He is a historic athlete, a powerful businessman, and one of the most influential figures the NBA has ever produced. But Stephen A sees something behind the money that bothers him. He sees influence. He sees a superstar who does not just play the game anymore, but can bend the conversation around the game. LeBron does not need to wait for a network to defend him. He does not need a reporter to explain his side. He has his own platforms, his own business partners, his own loyal audience, and his own way to speak directly to the world. And that is where Stephen A believes the danger begins. Because in sports, criticism is supposed to be part of the deal. Greatness gets praised, but greatness also gets questioned. If you chase championships, if you call yourself a leader, if you want your name beside Michael Jordan, then people are going to examine every decision, every failure, every power move, and every uncomfortable moment. Stephen A believes LeBron wants the praise that comes with being legendary, but not always the pressure that comes with being judged like one. That is the heart of the conflict. It is not Nike. It is not Spring Hill. It is not Fenway Sports Group. It is not even the Lakers. Those are only pieces of the bigger machine. The real issue is whether LeBron's machine has become so powerful that it can shape public opinion before critics even get a fair shot. To Stephen A, LeBron's media empire is not just a business success story, it is a shield against uncomfortable questions, a shield against the GOAT debate, a shield against anyone who refuses to call him the greatest basketball player of all time. And Stephen A refuses. He can call LeBron brilliant. He can call him elite. He can call him one of the top 2 or 3 players to ever touch a basketball. But he will not put him above Michael Jordan. Not because LeBron lacks numbers, not because LeBron lacks longevity, but because Stephen A believes there are moments, losses, and pressures that numbers alone cannot erase. That is why every LeBron discussion eventually turns personal. When Stephen A talks about LeBron's contracts, he is really talking about leverage. When he talks about LeBron's media company, he is really talking about control. When he talks about LeBron's legacy, he is really talking about the one thing LeBron's empire still cannot force him to say. LeBron is the GOAT, and until Stephen A says those words, this tension will never disappear. Because this is no longer just a debate between an analyst and an athlete. It is a battle between two kinds of power. LeBron has the power of greatness, wealth, ownership, and global influence. Stephen A has the power of the microphone, the argument, and the refusal to back down. One man built an empire to protect his story. The other built a career by challenging stories that look too protected. And now they are locked in a fight where neither side wants to give the other the final word. The GOAT debate LeBron can't escape. For all the money, records, power, and greatness, there is still one name LeBron James cannot escape. Michael Jordan. That name follows every LeBron debate. It follows every playoff run, every finals loss, every legacy conversation. And every time Stephen A. Smith talks about the greatest player in NBA history, Stephen A. respects LeBron. He calls him one of the greatest ever. He praises the longevity, the scoring record, the championships, the leadership, and the business empire. But when the question becomes the GOAT, Stephen A. always gives the same answer. Jordan, 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, 10 scoring titles, defensive player of the year, a perfect finals record. But to Stephen A., it is not only about numbers, it is about fear. Jordan did not just beat teams. He broke them. He turned legends into victims of his own story. That is where Stephen A. believes LeBron falls short. LeBron has lasted longer. He has carried impossible pressure since high school. He has won in Cleveland, Miami, and Los Angeles. He has dominated across eras. But Stephen A. keeps pointing to the finals losses. He keeps pointing to the moments where LeBron was supposed to own the stage, but did not close the story like Jordan. To LeBron's fans, that sounds unfair. They argue that 10 finals appearances prove dominance, not weakness. They say LeBron carried weaker teams farther than anyone expected. They say longevity matters, adaptability matters. Carrying 3 franchises matters. But Stephen A. does not move. Because in his eyes, the GOAT debate is not about who lasted the longest. It is about who stood tallest when everything was on the line. And he believes Jordan never blinked. That is why this debate cuts so deep. LeBron can build companies, sign billion-dollar deals, control his own media, and become the face of athlete empowerment. But he cannot force Stephen A. to say the one sentence he refuses to say. LeBron James is greater than Michael Jordan. Stephen A. will not give him that crown. And because he will not, every other issue becomes louder. The contracts, the media empire, the Lakers' future, the Bronny controversy. Underneath all of it is the same truth. Stephen A. respects LeBron, but he refuses to surrender the throne. The 2011 finals wound, but there is one chapter in LeBron James' career that Stephen A. Smith will never let disappear. The 2011 NBA Finals. To LeBron's fans, it was a painful lesson, a turning point. The moment that forced him to become colder, smarter, stronger, and more complete. They argue that without that failure, the version of LeBron who later won in Miami, came back to Cleveland, and delivered a championship to Los Angeles might never have existed. But to Stephen A., 2011 is not just a lesson, it is evidence. It is the moment he keeps bringing back whenever the GOAT debate gets too close. Because in Stephen A's mind, you cannot claim the throne over Michael Jordan and still have that series sitting in your history. The setup made it even worse. LeBron had just gone to Miami. He had joined Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. The Heat were not supposed to lose to the Dallas Mavericks. They were supposed to dominate. They were supposed to launch a dynasty. They were supposed to prove that the new super team era had arrived and that LeBron had finally found the stage where he would take over the league completely. Instead, the story collapsed. Dallas did not have the same star power. They did not have the same hype, but they had discipline, belief, and a veteran superstar in Dirk Nowitzki who refused to be intimidated. As the series got tighter, the pressure got heavier. And when the fourth quarters arrived, the spotlight turned directly toward LeBron. That is where Stephen A says everything changed. Because the player who was supposed to be the most unstoppable force in basketball did not look unstoppable. He looked hesitant. He looked passive. He looked like a man trapped between expectation and fear. While Wade attacked and Dirk delivered, LeBron faded into the background in moments where legends are supposed to step forward. For Stephen A., that is the wound money cannot cover. A Nike deal cannot erase it. A billion-dollar empire cannot bury it. A media company cannot rewrite it. Because the footage still exists, the box score still exists, the memory still exists. And every time LeBron supporters say he is greater than Jordan, Stephen A. reaches back to that series and says, "Not so fast." That is what makes 2011 so powerful in this story. It is not just about losing. Great players lose. Jordan lost before he won. Kobe lost. Magic lost. Kareem lost. Every legend has scars, but Stephen A. believes this scar is different because of how it happened. LeBron did not just lose the final. He lost control of the moment, and for a player whose entire modern image is built around control, that matters. He controls his business, he controls his media, he controls his partnerships, he controls his future as a free agent. But in 2011, with the championship right there, he could not control the ending. To LeBron's side, that is an unfair way to define an entire career. They point to 2012 and 2013 inches Miami. They point to the 3-1 comeback against Golden State in 2016. They point to the bubble championship with the Lakers. They say the true measure of greatness is not avoiding failure, but growing from it. And that argument is strong. But Stephen A. is not arguing that LeBron is not great. He is arguing that the greatest ever cannot have that kind of collapse on the biggest stage and still pass Michael Jordan. That is why the 2011 finals still haunt this debate. Not because LeBron never recovered, but because Stephen A. never forgot. When Bronny turned criticism into war, the tension between LeBron James and Stephen A. Smith had been building for years, but it did not fully explode until one name entered the story: Bronny James. Before Bronny, the fight was mostly about legacy. It was about Jordan. It was about the GOAT debate. It was about finals losses, media control, business power, and whether LeBron's empire had become too large for anyone to question, honestly. But once Bronny became part of the conversation, everything changed. Because now this was no longer just about LeBron the player. It was about LeBron the father. When the Lakers drafted Bronny, the basketball world immediately split in two. One side saw history, a father and son wearing the same NBA uniform, a moment the league had never truly seen before. A powerful story about family, survival, and a dream LeBron had spoken about for years. But the other side saw something more complicated. They asked whether Bronny was ready. They asked whether his game had earned that spot at that exact moment. They asked whether the Lakers were making a basketball decision or a LeBron decision. And when those questions started spreading, Stephen A. Smith stepped right into the storm. He did not say Bronny had no future. He did not say the young man could never become an NBA player. His argument was simpler and sharper. At that moment, Bronny was not ready for the weight being placed on him, but even that was enough to light the fire. Because to LeBron, any public criticism involving his son was no longer just analysis. It felt personal. It felt like the media had crossed a line from discussing basketball into touching his family. And for a man who has spent his whole career protecting his image, his children, and his inner circle, that line mattered. Stephen A. saw it different. In his mind, he was not attacking Bronny, he was questioning LeBron. He was questioning the power LeBron had inside the Lakers. He was questioning whether one superstar's dream had pushed a young player into a spotlight he may not have been ready to carry. That is why the conflict became so explosive. Both men believed they were defending something important. LeBron believed he was defending his son. Stephen A. believed he was defending honest basketball analysis. And once both sides framed themselves as the protector of something bigger, there was no easy way back. This is where LeBron's empire became part of the story again. Because Bronny was not just entering the NBA as a rookie, he was entering as the son of one of the most powerful athletes in history. Every shot, every mistake, every minute on the court would be judged through the shadow of his father's name. That is a heavy burden for any young player. And Stephen A. believed LeBron had helped create that burden. To him, LeBron's influence made the Lakers' decision impossible to separate from business, branding, and family legacy. The jersey sales, the headlines, the historic father-son storyline. The media attention, all of it made Bronny's selection bigger than a normal draft pick. But bigger does not always mean fair. That became the uncomfortable question at the center of the drama. Was Bronny being given a beautiful opportunity, or was he being placed inside a storm created by his father's power? That question cut deep, because nobody wants to be accused of using family for legacy. Nobody wants their child turned into a talking point on national television, and nobody with LeBron's pride was going to sit quietly while a commentator questioned the path of his son. So the old fight changed shape. It was no longer just LeBron versus Stephen A. It was fatherhood versus criticism, power versus accountability, family loyalty versus public debate. And once Bronny became the bridge between all of those things, the disagreement stopped being another sports argument and started becoming a war. The courtside confrontation. Then came the moment nobody could ignore. A Lakers game. A packed arena. Cameras everywhere. Fans watching every move. And right there, near the court, LeBron James walked up to Stephen A. Smith. That was the moment the tension stopped living on television panels and podcast clips. It became real. It became physical presence. Two powerful men face to face, carrying years of criticism, pride, frustration, and unfinished arguments between them. LeBron did not need a press conference. He did not need a long statement. He did not need a social media post. He went directly to Stephen A. and made his message clear. Do not talk about my son like that. For LeBron, this was about family. He had heard the comments, he had seen the conversation around Bronny, and no matter how Stephen A. framed it as basketball analysis, LeBron saw a father's line being crossed. To him, Bronny was not just a draft topic, he was his child. And when a national voice keeps questioning your child in front of millions, the issue stops feeling professional. But Stephen A. saw the moment very differently. To him, the problem was not that LeBron confronted him. The problem was where and how it happened. Stephen A. believed LeBron could have spoken to him privately, after the game, in a hallway, in a locker room area, man-to-man, away from cameras and public pressure. Instead, it happened courtside. That detail mattered, because in Stephen A.'s mind, LeBron understood exactly what that setting meant. He knew cameras were around, he knew people would notice, he knew the clip would travel, and once the moment became public, Stephen A. believed the narrative had already been shaped before he even had a chance to explain himself. That is why this confrontation became bigger than Bronny. It became a symbol to LeBron's supporters. It showed a father protecting his son with strength and loyalty. They saw a man who had spent his whole life under a microscope finally telling the media there are limits. They saw a parent saying that basketball criticism is one thing, but family is another. To Stephen A. supporters, it looked like pressure. It looked like the most powerful athlete in the sport using his presence, his status, and the public setting to send a warning. They saw a commentator being challenged, not in a private conversation, but in a place where LeBron's star power controlled the room. And that is the genius, or the danger, of LeBron James. Every move carries weight. A simple conversation does not stay simple. A courtside exchange becomes a national debate. A father defending his son becomes a question about media freedom. A few words near the floor become another chapter in the battle over LeBron's power. Stephen A. later made it clear that he felt LeBron had misrepresented his criticism. He insisted he was not attacking Bronny as a person. He was questioning the basketball situation around him. In Stephen A.'s view, the real target was never the son. It was the father's influence. But by then, the emotional line had already been drawn. LeBron believed Stephen A. had gone too far. Stephen A. believed LeBron had turned analysis into accusation, and the public was left choosing side. That is what made the courtside confrontation so explosive. It did not solve anything. It did not calm the situation down. It made everything sharper, more personal, more dangerous, because after that night, nobody could pretend this was just another media debate. Stephen A. was no longer simply talking about LeBron. LeBron had answered, and once the king steps down from the throne to confront the critic face to face, the entire kingdom starts watching. The Pat McAfee firestorm. After the courtside confrontation, the drama could have ended, but it did not. LeBron took the story to the Pat McAfee show, where he made one thing clear: basketball criticism is fair, but family is different. Talk about performance. Talk about mistakes. Talk about what happens on the court. But once the conversation touches Bronny in a way that feels personal, LeBron believes the line has been crossed. Stephen A. Smith heard something else. He heard control. To him, LeBron had chosen a friendly platform where he could speak without being challenged directly. Stephen A. believed this was exactly how LeBron operates. Pick the room, shape the message, control the reaction, and avoid a real face-to-face debate. That is why Stephen A. fired back so hard. He said he was not attacking Bronny as a person. He was questioning whether Bronny was ready for the NBA spotlight and whether LeBron's influence had helped place him there too soon. In Stephen A.'s mind, the criticism was always aimed at the situation, not the son. But LeBron supporters saw it differently. They believed Bronny was being dragged into a national debate he never asked for. They saw a young player trying to start his career while millions judged him through his father's name. To them, LeBron was not controlling the story. He was protecting his family. And that is what made the fight so complicated. Both sides had a point. LeBron had the right to defend his son. Stephen A. had the right to question a basketball decision involving the most powerful player in the league. But when family, media, franchise, power, and legacy all collide, there is no clean line anymore. Stephen A. then made the deeper accusation: LeBron wanted a monologue, not a conversation. He believed LeBron would speak on friendly platforms, but would not sit down for a direct, unedited debate. To Stephen A., that proved the real issue. This was not just about Bronny. It was about control. Who controls the message? Who controls the criticism? Who gets to challenge LeBron James when his power reaches beyond the court? By the end, the Pat McAfee appearance did not calm the storm. It made it bigger, because now the question was no longer whether Stephen A. went too far or whether LeBron was too protective. The real question became this: who gets to control the story of LeBron James? Genius or manipulation? This is where the LeBron James story becomes complicated. To one side, LeBron is a genius. He is the blueprint for the modern athlete. He built companies, took equity, created platforms, and turned fame into ownership. He stopped letting teams, networks, and commentators control his image. That is not manipulation. That is evolution. For years, athletes were told to play, take the check, smile for the camera, and let others profit from their story. LeBron changed that. He showed future stars they can be more than employees. They can be investors, producers, partners, and owners. But Stephen A. Smith sees the other side. He sees power that can make honest criticism harder. He sees an athlete so influential that teams may shape decisions around him, media may chase access to him, and fans may attack anyone who challenges him. To Stephen A., LeBron's empire is not only freedom, it is protection, and protection can become a shield. That is why Stephen A. refuses to back down. He is not just arguing about Bronny, the Lakers, or one interview. He is arguing against the idea that greatness should be above challenge. He respects LeBron's career, but he does not believe respect should mean silent, and that is why fans are split. Some see Stephen A. as the one voice willing to say what others will not. Others see him as a loud critic using LeBron's name for attention. Some see LeBron as a father, pioneer, and businessman protecting what he built. Others see a superstar who wants to control praise and criticism at the same time. Maybe the truth is in the middle. LeBron can be brilliant and sensitive. Stephen A. can be honest and dramatic. Bronny can deserve patience while basketball questions remain fair. The Lakers can celebrate history while still facing questions about pressure, influence, and merit. There is no simple villain here. Only power, pride, family, legacy, and two men who refuse to give up the final word. Maybe LeBron is the future of athlete empowerment. Maybe Stephen A. is the warning that power still needs to be questioned. Maybe both are true. The final chapter of LeBron's legacy. And now we reach the real question. How does LeBron James want this story to end? Not just the Lakers story, not just free agency. The bigger story, the story of a kid from Akron who became the face of a generation, then became something the NBA had never fully seen before. A superstar, a billionaire, a businessman, a media owner, a father, and a walking debate about greatness. That is why this final chapter mattered. LeBron is no longer fighting only for wins, he is fighting for memory. He is fighting for how people will talk about him when the jersey is finally off, when the chase is over, and when the last arena gives him the last standing ovation. Will they remember the scoring record, the championships, the 3-1 comeback in Cleveland, the longevity, the way he changed athlete empowerment forever? Or will they remember the argument, the GOAT debate, the finals losses, the Bronny controversy, the media control, the feeling that LeBron wanted not only respect, but control over the entire conversation around that respect. That is where Stephen A. Smith becomes important. He does not own the teams. He does not write the contracts. He does not control LeBron's companies, but he controls one thing LeBron cannot buy: his own opinion. And that opinion has become the crack in the billion-dollar wall. Stephen A. can admire LeBron, praise him, rank him among the greatest ever, and still refuse to say he is greater than Michael Jordan. That refusal is small on paper, but in this story, it means everything, because it proves that even the most powerful athlete in basketball cannot control every voice. No empire can erase every question, no platform can silence every critic, no legacy, no matter how carefully built, can survive without being tested. And maybe that is the lesson. Power is not wrong. Success is not wrong. Building your own platform is not wrong. LeBron has every right to protect his name, his family, his business, and his future. In many ways, he has opened doors for every athlete who comes after him. But power also comes with responsibility. The louder the platform, the more room there must be for honest questions. The stronger the legacy, the less it should fear criticism. Stephen A. should remember something too. Behind every debate is a human being. Behind every headline is a family. Behind every young player like Bronny is someone trying to grow under pressure most people will never understand. Criticism can be fair without becoming cruel. Analysis can be strong without losing compassion. That is the human side of this story. LeBron is not perfect. Stephen A. is not perfect. No legend is. No critic is. But maybe the healthiest ending is not one man destroying the other. Maybe the better ending is understanding that greatness and accountability can exist together. LeBron's empire may be genius. Stephen A.'s criticism may be necessary. And the NBA may be better when both power and truth are forced to share the same room. So as LeBron moves toward the final stretch of his career, the world will keep watching. The Lakers will wait. The fans will argue. Stephen A. will keep talking. And LeBron will keep moving like a man determined to write the ending himself. But history does not belong to one person. History belongs to everyone who remembers it, questions it, and learns from it. So now, I want to hear from you. If you believe LeBron's empire is the greatest example of athlete empowerment in NBA history, press 1 inch the comments. If you believe Stephen A. is right that even LeBron must be challenged, press 2. If you think the truth is somewhere in the middle, press 3. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with another NBA fan, and stay with us for the next chapter in basketball's biggest debates. Because in the NBA, the game does not end when the clock hits 0. Sometimes that is when the real story begins.